Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley here at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am sharing two card projects featuring the new Pickleball Pals stamps and coordinating dies from Concord 9th. I absolutely love this set. When I saw it in the May 2025 release, I was like, I know I have to use that. So this little bundle consists of this nice large stamp set that has some kind of multi-step stamping and then also a die set that coordinates. Now you can either use the stamps and the dies together or you can use the dies on their own to create some pickleball paddles. And I'm going to show you how to do each of these here in today's video tutorial. So I'm going to start with the multi-step stamping, and some of these are multi-step and some of them are optional multi-step and some of them are just single step. So you can see I'm laying out several paddles on my piece of cardstock, and I am using the Concord 9th white cardstock. Now for the floral pattern, I am going to stamp the background, which is the first step, in some Parsley ink. And for the checkerboard pattern, I'm going to do this completely wrong, so I'm going to show you how to do it correctly here in just a moment. For the stripes, I'm starting out with pink lemonade, and for the polka dot paddle, I have some Aqua Sky ink. Now you can see here, I actually had a bubble in this polka dot paddle, so I did not get a great stamping. I'm going to go back, fix that bubble. I'm going to re-ink everything and stamp a second time. And I did get better results, but I didn't get the greatest results because I didn't work out that bubble completely. Now, once I have the first layer stamped, I'm going to line up the second layer. And for the checkerboard, again, ignore me because I'm doing it totally wrong, but I'm stamping the florals in watermelon ink and the second stripe for the striped paddle in watermelon ink as well. I'm laying down the third step in that floral pattern, which is the center of the florals, and I'm stamping that in Creamsicle and that final thin stripe in some Parsley ink. Now I have some Starfruit ink and some Starfruit cardstock, and I am stamping that pickleball on that cardstock. Now that everything's stamped out, I am going to take the coordinating die, which is the center portion of that pickleball paddle, and cut out my design. And I'm also going to cut out the pickleballs, some hearts, as well as the grip. So I'm going to work my way through all of these patterns here. You will notice that these patterns actually have a bleed on them. So if you shift your pickleball die off, the paddle die off to the right or left a little bit, you will still get an edge-to-edge design on these because of that bleed. Now here is the correct way to stamp the checkerboard. You're going to start with the first layer, ink that up in your color and stamp it. Now for the second layer, you want to make sure that the square on the bottom is offset from the other two squares, not in line with it, which is what I did the first time. Now that I have everything stamped and die cut, I'm going to die cut a few more pieces like the paddle bases and some grips. I even die cut the center portion of those paddles from white cardstock to kind of layer up my die cutting. Of course, that's optional, but I'm going to do that because I think it gives it a little bit of dimension and kind of brings these pickleball paddles to life. So for each of these pickleball paddles, the pattern portion has a piece of white cardstock behind it. I adhere that to the larger base, and then I'm going to add the grips to the base of each of these paddles. And once each of the grips is added, then I can add the little detail to the top portion of the grip. I'm just adding a little line of liquid glue and then placing that small cardstock piece, and that will complete my paddles. You can see I have several paddles here. I'm going to use 2 on today's card project. For the card front, I die cut a panel of Aqua Sky cardstock using the Quilted card front die from Concord 9th, and I'm trimming that down to 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. And then I have a strip of Starfruit cardstock where I'm going to stamp my sentiment. I'm stamping the "I think you're amazing" sentiment right on the bottom of that little strip of Starfruit cardstock using some obsidian pigment ink. This is from Altenew. It's a great black pigment ink. You can see I'm just using a block for this, but you can use a MISTI stamping tool. Once I have that stamped, I'm going to position that onto my card front and adhere it down using some foam adhesive to bring a little dimension to this. Now I'm going to have these 2 patterned pickleball paddles, say that 10 times fast, overlap on my card front. So I'm getting them in position and I'm holding them with my finger, and I'm just going to put a piece of repositionable tape as I add my foam adhesive. Now, I wasn't thinking here, and I actually added foam adhesive to that striped pickleball paddle, but it doesn't need any foam adhesive because it's going to overlap with that Starfruit strip of cardstock that already has foam adhesive behind it. So I'm just gently pulling that off, and I will add some liquid glue to the back of that paddle instead. Once I have my adhesive on the backs of these, I can go ahead and flip this grouping over and place it onto my card. Again, the floral patterned pickleball paddle has some foam adhesive on the back, but that striped paddle does not. I have my pickleball that I've die cut using the coordinating die, and I'm placing that onto the paddle using some foam adhesive and a tiny little heart that I'm going to place on also with some foam adhesive. And then I'll take this entire card front and add it to an A2 white card base using, you guessed it, more foam adhesive because I love big cards and I cannot lie. So that finishes off card number 1, which features a lot of stamping for the pickleball paddles, but I wanted to show you another option, and that is using the die set on its own. So you could use this with pattern paper. Today, I'm just going to use some various colors of Concord 9th cardstock. I have Parsley, Watermelon, and Creamsicle, and I'm using the stripe die inside of the die set to die cut each of these cardstock colors. So I'll have a large, a medium, and a small stripe in each of these 3 colors. Before I move on to the next part, I'm just going to arrange these into some color groupings that I like, a large, a medium, and a small of each of the 3 colors, kind of mixing them up here. Now, before I adhere these to the cardstock and then die cut, I'm actually going to die cut the paddle base using some Nectar cardstock. I'll die cut that 3 times, and I decided I wanted these paddles to be a little sturdier, and so I'm die cutting an additional layer of white cardstock for each of those bases as well. So now that I have that die cutting done, I can work on my striped patterns. I'm using that inner part of the paddle as a guide to just make sure that I have everything where it's going to fit at an angle that I like. And once I know that it's going to fit within that paddle, kind of in the area that I want it to, I'm going to start adhering these strips of cardstock to this white cardstock. So I'm using some liquid glue. You can see I have the largest stripe at the top. That is Parsley cardstock. And then I'm adding the medium stripe in Watermelon and then the smallest stripe in Creamsicle. Now, because this small stripe is so thin, I actually just used my glue bottle and added a thin line of adhesive right below the Watermelon rather than try to add it to the back of the Creamsicle. Now, once those stripes are adhered down, I can use the die, hold it in place with a little repositionable craft tape, and then run this through my die cut machine. And this is going to give me a die cut striped pattern. Now, if you wanted to do this with stamping instead, you do have the stripe stamps within that stamp set. I kind of created that plaid pattern before. But this gives you a completely different look. And as I mentioned before, you can use these dies with various colors of cardstock or even pattern paper to create different looks. Now that I have everything die cut, I'm going to start assembling. So I'm adding my 2 bases together just to kind of give that Nectar cardstock a little bit of sturdiness. I have that piece of white cardstock behind it. And then the center of the paddle, or the pattern portion of the paddle, I'm going to add a layer of white cardstock behind that as well, and then add that to the paddle base. I'm using a lot of liquid glue for these because it just allows me to kind of slide things into the perfect position and just make sure that I have everything where I like it. I decided to die cut the grips from the Nectar cardstock. Now, you could skip this part, but this die cut really does add a lot of texture and makes these little paddles come to life. So I would recommend just going ahead and taking that extra step. You can see I've added the liquid glue to that area on the paddle base, and then I'm adding the grips to each of these paddles. And then finally, I'll add the little kind of, I don't know, border piece or joint piece for that grip to each of these paddles. And I've die cut that out of the color cardstock of the smallest strip for each of these. So you can see the small strip on the right hand side is of that Parsley cardstock. So that's what the grip detail is going to be out of. And the middle one has the Watermelon and the final one has the Creamsicle. So all of these have a different little accent piece on the grip. I like to put my liquid glue right on top of that grip as it's already assembled, and then place this detail piece or that joint piece right there on top of the liquid glue. I do find some reverse grip tweezers really help with these smaller die cuts and getting them into place. Now you can see I have a pickleball for each of these paddles as well. I will add those onto the paddles using some foam adhesive. They're not actually adhered yet. Since these paddles are made mostly of dies, I decided to go ahead and do my sentiment from the die set as well. I'm adding a die cut heart, and then I have the pickleball there next to it, and I'm adding the Best Friends die cut sentiment from the die set. I've stacked it up with white cardstock a couple of times and then added some Concord 9th matte silver cardstock on the top of that stack, and then I'm just gluing that to my paddle, and you can see that one will take center stage. Now, to kind of mimic the idea of a net, I took a strip of Parsley cardstock. It's about 1.5 inches wide by 5.5 inches. And I die cut it using the basket weave card front die from Concord 9th. And this gives it kind of that net texture. I'll adhere this onto a white card base using some tape runner adhesive. And then I have a couple of strips of matte silver cardstock from Concord 9th that I'll add along the top and bottom of this kind of quote unquote net. I thought this was a really great way to kind of mimic the idea of a pickleball court, where you'll find they're often green like a tennis court, but also bring in the texture of a net and kind of bring all of this together. So I'm just adding those silver strips along the top and the bottom of my quote unquote net, and then I'll flip this over and trim off the excess. Now that my card base is ready, I can start adhering my paddles. I did add some foam adhesive to the back side of each of these paddles. I'm adding that horizontal striped paddle right there in the center on my card front, and then I'm going to flip these other two and kind of nestle them in with that center paddle, creating a fun little pattern of paddles. And that finishes off my second card using the brand new Pickleball Pals bundle from Concord 9th. This one features more of the die set, but you can really see the versatility in this bundle. I think it is so much fun. Pickleball is all the rage right now. And if you haven't tried it, I recommend getting out there and playing. It is so much fun. We actually started playing in 2020 before it was even cool. Now, as always, I will have links to the featured products used in these projects in the YouTube description below. So if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there, or you can head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I'll have that linked below as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. I want to say thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I am so glad you're here. I hope you enjoyed these projects, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here so you don't miss any of my card making and paper crafting video tutorials, as well as my Carissa Crafts live stream broadcasts right here on YouTube. You don't want to miss those, so make sure those notifications are turned on. Thanks again for watching. Let me know in the comments below which of these two cards is your favorite. I cannot wait to hear. I think it's actually, well, I don't know. It's a toss-up for me. Maybe it's card number 2, but I'd love to hear what you think. Be sure to stay tuned here to my YouTube channel. I will have lots more inspiration featuring this new May 2025 release from Concord 9th this month. I have tons of projects to share, and there's always fun to be had here. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.